everybody. Welcome back to Project Podcast. My name is Ira Bowman. I am excited. I have my friend with me here today. This is Professor, I can't say that very well, Professor Pete Alexander. Welcome to the show, Pete.
Ira, it's so great to be here, and thank you to your listeners for tuning in.
I get tongue-tied sometimes. I have dyslexia, as you know. Anyways, welcome to the show. We're going to talk about stress today in detail, which is good because I definitely deal with it. I think most of us do. As you know, I ask 3 questions on the podcast. If you're ready, I'm just going to jump into question number 1.
Yeah, let's fire it away.
All right, let's do this thing. So question number 1 is, what led you to transform your career? You were a corporate marketer. Now you are a professional stress relief expert. What led you to switch?
Well, it started back in 2008 because I was dealing with a perfect storm of stressful activities. And what it culminated was my being diagnosed with stress-induced diabetes. But I didn't listen to my body about what stress was doing to it. And so I ended up burning the candle at both ends for another 10 years until I ended up in the emergency room with a severe case of diabetic ketoacidosis. And for your listeners who don't know what that is, my body was eating itself alive because of my stress.
Wow.
And I was 1 hour away from being comatose. I was moved to ICU for 3 days. And on my second day of ICU stay, my boss texts me at about 6 a.m. and says, "You have a webinar you need to run at 8 o'clock. What are you going to do about it?" And as a hard driving leader, I went ahead and I started trying to do everything I could with my phone because I didn't have my laptop in the ICU.
Right.
And I ended up just trying to do whatever I could there. And my glucose numbers had been coming down. And then all of a sudden they shot straight up. And it was a nurse who told me, she just basically said, "You realize that that's what put you in this bed in the first place."
Right.
It's that epiphany moment for me where I realized I better do something because I'm trading my mental and physical health for my career and other responsibilities. And that's not a good trade.
No, for sure.
Right. And so I went ahead and changed careers. I started working on myself first, figured out what worked for me. I saw my stress go way down. I saw my glucose numbers go way down. I saw my weight go way down, and I saw my energy go way, way up.
That's cool.
I had discovered the fountain of youth, and I said, I got to share this with people.
Right. I need some of that. I definitely need some of that.
Yeah. So that's what I'm doing.
Okay. Well, that's awesome. I'm sure plenty of people who are watching this can relate, not necessarily to the hospital part, but to the needing to deal with stress. So we're going to, on question number 2, what can happen if people don't? Because I'm pig-headed. I have a lot of pig-headed friends. You were pig-headed, obviously, because you ignored the warning signs and kept driving forwards, and it almost cost you your life, and thankfully it didn't. But what can happen if people don't?
Well, I talk about this with a dear friend of mine. His name's Ken, and he and I were best friends in high school. We served as each other's best men at our weddings, and we supported each other as proud fathers. Fast forward 30 years, and Ken was struggling in both his personal and professional life. And he too ended up in the emergency room, but in his case, it was with intestinal cancer. And the doctors had to remove over 2/3 of his intestines, and then he had to do a very serious chemotherapy regimen. And he would be 3 weeks on the chemo, 1 week off. And on the 1 week off is when we would talk, because he'd have the energy either in person or over the phone. And every time he told me he was absolutely convinced that stress caused his cancer.
Yeah.
And 2 weeks before his 49th birthday, Ken passed away because of his disease.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah, and I miss him dearly.
Yeah.
And, it just is another reminder that, if you let the stress over time eat you alive, your body's going to give out. Your
Yep.
body's going to give out. And the thing that people don't realize is that, you know, the amount of power that our brain, when we're mentally stressed, has on our body. And the crazy thing is, almost all of our stress is self-induced.
Right.
We do it to ourselves. So, like, you know, my boss earlier in the, you know, in the emergency room, she didn't get, you know, she didn't cause my stress. I could have done something else, but I went into immediate, oh my God, I got to fix it mode.
Right.
So I did it to myself. And that's what I try and help people figure out, is that, you know, what is it that's causing you to do this to yourself? And let's figure out a way where you can minimize that stress.
No doubt. Okay. So obviously we don't want people to get cancer. We don't want people to end up with the diabetes stuff. I mean, stress it's a serious thing. We're talking to, obviously on Project Help You Grow, we're talking primarily to job seekers. That's a stressful
Absolutely.
thing. So help us out, Professor Pete. We need some help. Okay, so you have a book, obviously, that they can go to on your website, petealexander.com, right? /book.
Yep.
So besides that, your blog, what can they do? What tips? What can they do to reduce stress? Help us out here. Give us something.
Well, you know, if you're talking about specifically job seekers, you know, what I would do is visualize, if you're all very worried about an interview,
Mm-hmm.
and you're stressing yourself out, like, you know, often we do. Good stress is fine. If you get the butterflies, but if you're really getting a lot of anxiety,
it's gripping you with fear, right? Yeah.
Exactly. The best thing to do with that situation is to close your eyes and visualize that interview, the end of that interview, going really, really well. So 5 minutes after that interview, you've done really, really well. Whatever that means, the person offering you the job, somebody congratulating you, whatever that is, visualize that and let that sink in, all the emotions, the positive emotions of that, and that will help curb the anxiety.
Awesome. It seems so simple, but we actually learned that in sports. I learned that in sports. That's, you know, it's funny. I never really thought about it that way, but awesome. Okay. Well, I want to thank you for coming on the show. I want to encourage people to find you. I know you're on LinkedIn, not only you personally, but also your business page, which is petealexander.com. So I'm going to link this podcast to your business page, but I'm going to encourage people to also seek you out, find you on LinkedIn. You have a ton of tips. They're all free for people to find, to watch, and to implement to help them reduce the stress. Pete, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Ira, it's been a pleasure, and yeah, I hope your listeners can go to my page. 1 to 2 minutes tips that they can just implement right away. So de-stress yourselves.
Guys out there, take this seriously. This is something that both Professor Pete ignored and his friend. One almost lost his life, and one did lose their life, unfortunately. So don't ignore the symptoms. Get the help that you need.
Exactly.
Thanks for being on the show, my friend.
Thanks, Ira.